La profesora Londa Schiebinger es catedrática de Historia de la Ciencia de la Universidad de Stanford y doctora por la Universidad de Harvard. Dirige un programa sobre innovación de género en ciencia, medicina, ingeniería y medio ambiente. La Universidad de La Laguna le ha otorgado el que será su sexto doctorado honoris causa, por su gran contribución a la comprensión y mejora de la inclusión social y de género en la ciencia y la tecnología.
Well, it's just a great honor to be here and to receive this honorary doctorate. Last year, the person who in La Laguna here is my godmother, Professor Karina Gonzalez, came to my office and we had a wonderful talk. And she was interested in collaborations, and this is really how my global project, Gendered Innovations, works. She's in computer architecture and computer science, and I'm a historian of science, and the way that we create the materials for our website is through collaborations with scientists and engineers and humanists and social scientists to create the methods that we use for sex, gender, and intersectional analysis, and also the case studies that demonstrate how using these kinds of approaches really gives you something new. And that's our goal with Gendered Innovations, is to produce science and technology that works for everyone across, I guess now the whole globe it would be, and at the same time to contribute to the environment and sustainability. So I'm just very pleased to be here. I've just arrived, so I know the university was founded in the 18th century. It goes back a long time, and I'm really, very excited to see everything. She was saying that she was working, when I met her this morning, she was saying she's working on something on education, I think education for STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, medicine. And if we can integrate this kind of methodology at the beginning of people's training, I wouldn't have to have a separate project on gendered innovation. It would become part of standard research methodology, which is what the European Commission tries to do. If you're applying for public funding there, you must state how sex, gender, and or intersectional analysis works in your research, so that they can before they give away taxpayer money to do research, they can see if you have the correct tools, the scientific tools to do it. Very disappointing. Trump will be the first convicted felon to be president of the United States, which none of us understand. And this has led to so there are many meetings now on how can we sustain all the, if you want to call it progress, or all the good things we've been doing with the environment and also at universities. Universities have become so much more inclusive in the last, say, 20 years, right? And we don't want to lose that. And so people are trying to develop strategies. And some people say that, our green revolution in the United States is now so entrenched that it can't just be pulled back in 4 years. But I don't know. I really did not think he would be elected, but then I didn't think Sweden would have. Sweden, of all wonderful places, would have anything but a nice liberal and democratic leader. So we must be vigilant, and I think that there's lots that we can still do as a university professor. We still have academic freedom, and we can teach students how to think critically, right? That's what we do in the humanities. How do you read critically? How do you think critically? And then in the sciences, some of these things are now policy, like the National Institutes of Health in the United States has also, if you're applying for public funding, you must say how sex as a biological variable is part of your research. Because for medical research, every person, every organism has sex. Maybe not gender, but sex for sure, biological sex. And so I hope that some things have been entrenched sufficiently that we'll be okay. But we must work harder in the next election and elect leaders who will support social equity and also environmental sustainability. The key example here is in medicine. I would say that gendered innovations and gender analysis, sex and gender analysis, is really most established in medicine because it is a life and death situation, right? So in 2001, there was a government study in the US that showed that 10 drugs had recently been drawn from the market and that 8 of those were more harmful for women, so 80%. And that was because women have not been in the research pipeline. So when you're developing a drug, which costs billions of dollars, I mean, you can't afford to get the research wrong, right? It causes human death and suffering, but it also wastes a lot of resources. So in the process, if you're developing a drug, early on you use lab animals. And for a long time, all the little mice and rats were also male, right? And then the clinical trials were also done on human males, and the idea there was to protect the females. So in 1973, there was this, we recognized the disaster of thalidomide, where pregnant women had taken a drug to stop, to keep them from miscarrying, and this caused physical harm to the fetus, and children were born with physical deformities. So the idea was to protect women. Okay, that's a nice idea, but then since men and women have different metabolisms and all sorts of sex differences in the body, we're not protecting them. We're withholding medicines that are designed also for females. So that's one example, and I think that's the example of harm if you don't take this into account. And if you do research right, we have found that there's a new study in the US that shows the fact that we now recognize, that the medical establishment recognizes that men and women typically have different symptoms of heart disease. And before, women's symptoms of heart disease were not recognized. And if she probably didn't know she was having a heart attack when she called 911 and said, "Oh, I'm extremely fatigued," they did not hear heart attack. And so women were getting to the emergency room 15 minutes later than typically, on average, men would get to the emergency room, depending on many things like class and all sorts of things. So we always need an intersectional approach. But now, I mean, my students even know already that men and women have different symptoms of heart attack. And this has really, this new study by the McKinsey Company and the American Heart Association showed that if people are making heart disease in women a priority, that this saves a lot of social resources, it saves money, but it also adds many quality life years to women's lives. Yeah, so this is huge, right? And I got onto this already in 2012 because I was in Madrid. And some newspapers interviewed me. I don't speak Spanish, so I put it through Google Translate. And this algorithm translated me as Londa Schiebinger, he said, he thought, and occasionally it wrote. And I thought, wow, there were so many markings of why I was female in that article, but there's a default to the masculine pronoun going from some languages to English. So then we started looking at all sorts of things. So today I came through the airport and there was facial recognition. I couldn't get on the plane except for facial recognition. And we know that from work on facial recognition that these programs don't see darker skin as well as they see lighter skin, and don't see women as well as they see men, because again, the training data set were the men, the white men developing the program. So there's a wonderful woman, scientist at MIT, who has widened the database and created, so the facial recognition now has better, fewer error rates. It has better success seeing everyone. So there's so many examples that we could see. And then one really interesting example is that Google really takes diversity to heart. They really want to be inclusive. And by doing so, they put in some algorithms into their image generators to say, show diversity. But then when people ask a historical question like, show me a picture of the people who wrote the US Constitution, who founded the US, right? And it gave a Native American man, it gave an East Asian woman, and I think there was a white guy there too. But these are not historically correct. So Google had tweaked its algorithms to give you diversity, to reshape our imagination. So I call this aspirational AI. They were trying to create the world we want, but then this algorithm really failed because when asked historical questions, it was not giving you the facts. So it's just all extremely interesting, and I think we're really in a period of churning ideas, and I think there's a lot to be excited about, but we need clear guardrails to make sure that this, people say that, artificial general intelligence is coming soon. We have to make sure it's not going to advantage certain people in society and disadvantage other people. Yeah, well, let me just talk about fish. So I work with an Italian scientist. She came to Stanford and studied with me and the people at our marine station for a semester, I think it was. And we have published some very important articles on sex analysis in marine organisms. And you're an island nation, so this might be important for you. So this is about environmental sustainability and about sustaining the populations of these marine organisms. So male and female, of course, marine organisms have 6 different kinds of sex. They're very, very interesting evolutionarily. We humans are kind of boring in that we have, male, female, and intersex. But anyway, if we don't understand how global warming impacts females differently and males differently, so policymakers might put into effect some protective measures that only help one part of the population because they didn't understand that the marine organisms may function differently by male and female. So I think this work, it just shows you how deep this work goes, that when we're setting environmental policy, we have to remember that many organisms in nature reproduce sexually, and if you save only the females and not the males, your population will collapse, or vice versa.